So I'm hoping this video helps you out with your Diablo 4 beta withdrawals. Thankfully, the devs gave us new insight into what's going on with the legendary gear and weapon variety in the full game versus the beta, and a bunch of brand new details straight from the devs. And guess what? Asmongold himself finally figured it out. The Barbarian isn't entirely a throwaway class in Diablo 4. In fact, he's pretty OP. And by the way, check this out right here. So you guys have got to check out this brand new Unreal Engine 5 game called King Arthur Legends Rise from Kabam. It's a squad RPG game featuring epic Arthurian quests, mythical weapons, and challenging foes. It also has crossplay between PC and mobile, so be sure to click the link in the description below and wishlist it on Steam right now to stay up to date on the latest news about all things King Arthur Legends Rise. One thing I love about King Arthur Legends Rise is the idea of collecting a wide variety of unique Arthurian legends, including knights, mages, rogues, and powerful iconic characters of the Arthurian legend lore within the Kingdom of Avalon. You'll be progressing through a dark and mysterious campaign as King Arthur himself, taking on the daunting task of rebuilding the Kingdom of Camelot, providing your heroes with the ultimate fortress. You'll also want to defend the land by using mythical weapons to take on terrifying monsters that wait in the shadows. You do not want to miss out on this game, so be sure to click on the link in my description below and wishlist on Steam to stay up to date on the latest news. And be sure to join the beta on Google Play, Android, in select regions starting March 27th. So check it out. All right, so let's get into it. Here we go. We have Ron Ferguson who says, PSA, the end of the Diablo 4 open beta. We are now officially 66.6 days from early access launch. That's not ominous at all. Hopefully the launch goes smoothly, of course. We're going to actually talk more about that here in just a moment. Now, one of the developers on Diablo 4, Joseph Apora, says this right here. I want to say, I don't think folks realize how many more legendary powers exist beyond what was on display during the Diablo 4 beta. There's a lot of bizarre, exciting, and totally balanced legendaries to discover when the game goes live in June. So apparently we only got a fraction of what is offered in the full version because some of you stepped away from the beta experience kind of underwhelmed by many of the legendaries. I kind of like mess around with your critical hits, your stats, but you want to see like effects, wild stuff going on that alter your weapon or your abilities in very cool ways. Apparently there's something there that we have yet to discover. So we'll discover it together during launch. Now, the skeleton army was actually one of the bigger complaints that I saw out of the Necro experience. Number one, people didn't like how they actually look, but also they appeared in towns. As indicated right here, it says skeleton army should disappear when you go into the city. And we actually have a response from one of the developers, and this is very exciting news, at least to me, because it kind of broke the immersion. It goes on to say this, PSA, Necro Skellies showing in town is a bug and will be fixed for launch. So it's good to know that they have adjusted that. Now, Kevin goes on to ask this right here, the Skellies in town don't bug me, but the stupid invisible walls are killing me. Can we fix that? And you guys know, when you're like roaming outside of town center going into the open world, you like are suddenly kind of stopped or trying to go through a force field. So let's see what the devs had to say about this one. Rod Ferguson goes on to confirm, yes, that's just an indication of the load on our services. Well, he doesn't say that that's going to be fixed, of course, but I hope that is not the experience at launch. But it seems like they're very aware of the problem. And I think the more and more we get into launch, or at least post-launch, I'm hoping that's alleviated, definitely, or that would just bring down the experience. Now, Asmongold himself recently discovered that the Barbarian is actually really good if you build him properly. This is an indication, I think a good indication, that you could do some really cool stuff with Barbarian. And there's further details that after like level 30, 40, you can get into some skills and abilities that are not on display during the beta that will even overcharge him even more. My personal experience with the Barbarian, you can do some really, really cool stuff. And there are some builds that are just not viable at all. Don't get me wrong. I feel that way about many of the different classes. I think that there still needs to be balance tweaks for basically all the classes. But yeah, it's cool to see that he discovered this for sure. Now, Roman goes on to ask the dev team several questions, and we get responses. It says this, will the senders for Helltide chests be tradable between players? Number two, is there any legendary effects related to or working with evade action mechanics later in the game. God, that's a great one. Is there any legendary item properly facilitating Murmuring Obel's farming? Regards from Ukraine. So let's get into the reply here. Now, if you don't know, I have to clarify something because some of you might actually not know this. Cenders, what are they? Cenders are dropped by monsters in Helltide events and can be spent to open Helltide chests scattered throughout respective regions. These chests boast bountiful boons exclusive to a singular item slot such as torso, leg, or two-handed weapon if the player is killed. The cenders are dropped and must be reclaimed. This is very much part of the end-game system. So this is what the dev team had to say right here. Nope, cenders are not tradable, and dying means you'll lose some as well. Number 2, yes, there is. And he's speaking to the fact that there is legendary fixes related to the dodge mechanic. Furthermore, he says not at this time, which means it seems that Murmuring Obels are not going to be exactly dedicated to legendaries at all. At least at this time, as he did say. Now, Mike Yerba of Blizzard goes on to say this right here. Oh, pro tip number 2. There's a mob on the left corner of the map right now that drops a level 35 one-handed mace. And other random loot, the required level of 23 through 27. You can use the occultist to put a power on the 35 mace, and it'll turn into a much lower level requirement to equip. Now, we got another response from the dev team because things are going to be changing. We got legit, but also the dev team says, enjoy this while you can. So it seems like that is definitely going to be changing in the future. And mentioning things that are changing, we got some indirect jokes from the dev team about things that are probably going to change. Check it out right here. It says Twitch streamer Duji somehow managed to solo Ashava, the Diablo 4 Beta's world boss, on hardcore mode twice. And he says, noted. I kid, ... But I think it's kind of like a tease saying, yeah, we've noticed some things that might be overpowered. Expect some things to happen and some changes to take place. That's me speculating, of course, but I think that's definitely going to be happening. So yeah, let's talk about that Diablo 4 launch. Seems like there's not a lot of hope about it, considering the beta was a little bit rough around the edges, to say the least. Diablo 4 beta does not inspire hope for a smooth launch. This one is from Forbes. It goes on to say the following right here. While I know it's a beta and Blizzard has said outright that there will be long lines and disconnects as they try to gather data for a smooth launch, I'm not convinced this is going to be a smooth launch. It's less than 3 months away now, and I very much don't believe that Blizzard will be able to keep up with the tidal wave of players who arrive at launch, and that we will endure a fairly long period of problems. I think the best case scenario right now is to avoid something utterly devastating like Diablo 3's Era 37 launch, but I still don't think it's going to go great. And I hear his concerns. Of course, what we experience in the beta is going to be very different in terms of the waves and waves and waves of players during the actual launch of the game. So yeah, I'm a little worried too. I just want the offline play button, but what we did experience with the beta is this. I felt like every Friday with the first weekend of the beta, it imitated the launch of the game. It was very, very rough. The second day was a little bit better, and then the third day was even better. Now, the second beta weekend rolled around. They said, let's do it again and try to be quicker and take on even more people and see if we can recover the servers even faster. It was kind of the same story. Friday was absolutely terrible, tons of disconnects. Saturday was actually pretty okay, but also very, very shaky. This is my experience, by the way, on Xbox Series X. And furthermore, on Sunday, finally, I felt like it was stable enough to really try it out and not have an actual disconnect during, say, like a world boss event. But there were still problems. There were still lag issues. But as we went, it did improve. And I think that is going to be the similar story for launch. And they're kind of preparing for those launch moments. And they're somewhat ready to handle, I hope, what is going to be coming, because they've hopefully imitated it. They're just going to try to scale it out, of course. Now, furthermore, it says this right here. I know this is not a universal experience. I've heard this is a better on console instead of PC and better in, say, Europe as opposed to the US, really. But it's pretty bad for me and a number of others, and if the game launches like this, it will be a problem. I will say this. If the PC has more problems than consoles, that is going to be an issue, because I feel like, of course, Diablo as a franchise was first and foremost established on PC. They better not leave the PC players behind. I'm curious to see, though, at the end of the day, what the sales numbers will be, consoles versus PC. I feel like the console audience is growing, but I do think, first and foremost, the PC audience is really going to be absolutely huge. So they better not neglect the PC audience. In fact, they better not neglect anyone on any platform. Now, we have an unpopular opinion. Check it out right here. It says, all classes should be as weak as the Druid and Barbarian. The Druid and Barbarian have been the classes I've enjoyed playing the most, specifically because they aren't that strong, and it's actually somewhat of a challenge to kill bosses and clear dungeons. When you find a piece of good gear, it really makes a difference. It feels like your character is growing stronger. The Necromancer, Sorcerer, and Rogue are already so powerful that getting good gear is like adding icing onto the cake that's already overflowing with icing. And I think perhaps that is where maybe world tiers come into play, up the difficulty when it comes to that sort of thing. But yes, balancing is an issue right now. And I do like when a game is somewhat challenging, but I also like the feeling of being like a god, you know, godlike, and going in there with my new build and absolutely wrecking and dominating. And then twisting that build in a different direction with whatever gear that I find and maybe respeccing. Now, I know that's going to be an issue in the late game, in the end game for the full version, that respeccing is not going to be realistic because of the cost. And let me know if that is a concern for you or not. Now, something that was really cool and noted is something very neat with the Druid. Check it out right here. Your hair color determines ultimately what your animal form looks like, which I thought this was a very cool touch. So it makes it even more important with customization with the Druid in terms of when you go and create your character, that this actually matters. So yeah, if you want like a red werewolf, then you want to definitely go like a ginger Druid, and you could have ginger werewolves roaming around with you. All right, so let's keep going, shall we, and get into your top comments. Remember, leave a comment down below. It can end up in a future video. All right, my previous video was about this one right here. It says, Necromancers, Druids, and world bosses have a glaring issue. So, let's get into this, shall we? First response comes from Trevor, who says this right here. I would like the option for zooming. I generally like how close it is, but for some battles, zooming out a little would be nice. Yeah, and have it like a smooth zoom. Right now, it's like, I believe it's only two options, correct? You have your default setting, which is right here, and then your zoom, and that's it, and nothing in between. It's not like a scroll where you can nicely, smoothly choose like 20 different zooms, I suppose you would say, which would be cool to see that sort of thing in this game. Now, Nick K says, as far as OP classes balance, how many classes are OP to start Diablo 2 and then fall off in Hell difficulty? You can't decide. They need adjusting based on level 25 out of 100. Think of Corpse Explosion Necro in Diablo 3, super powerful to start leveling, and then it falls off. Yes. And again, if you like that sort of playstyle, I personally think that it shouldn't necessarily fall off. It should be something that is viable. I'm wanting more viable options even in the end game. That's what I'm talking about. Now, Jathan says, it may not be an ideal aesthetic, but I would guess Blizz wanted it to be easy to distinguish summons from enemies. And he's talking about the look of the Necro Skeleton. I think you're absolutely correct. Now, I personally think there should be 2 to 3 different looks that are available for your Necro Skeleton army. So at least you have some choices. Maybe you want them glowing red as opposed to glowing this Diablo 3 type color that they are right now. But it kind of does match the aesthetics of what's going on with his Bone Spear move. As you can see, right, Bone Spear move, excuse me. So in some ways it does make sense. It doesn't like bother me too much, but some of you are like, oh God, this is absolutely horrible. So I do hope they have some sort of option for those of you that don't like it. But there it is, the latest happenings around Diablo 4. Thank you all so much for watching. You know, I cannot wait for June. I really want to mess more around with the Rogue. Let me know what class you guys are going to go with at launch. At launch, I am still deciding between the Barbarian versus Necro right now. I have some tough choices to make for sure. But thank you again, and I will see you all next time. Take care.